So this first how-to guide, I'm going to be showing you how to utilize Windows 7 services, both to disable and enable them, in order to make your computer not only run a little bit faster for having more resources in the pool to draw from, but also for security reasons. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start by going to the Start menu, then going to Control Panel, and then going to the Administrative Tools, and clicking on Services. So here we are at the Windows 7 services, and just going to pre-mention here, I'll be setting this up for a single computer on a home network. So there are no other computers, there are no other devices to connect to. I'm also going to mention here that this service list that we're looking at right now will depend on whether you're using Windows 7 Home, Windows 7 Home Pro, or Windows 7 Ultimate. In this particular instance, I'm going to be using Windows 7 Ultimate. So the first service that we're going to talk about is the Application Layer Gateway Service. And this is a method of providing an internet connection sharing service for any other device that you want to connect. However, the vast majority of you are going to have routers or will be provided routers by your internet service provider. And thus, we really don't have a reason to have a service on and enabled for sharing your connection. So go ahead and disable that service. Going down, we're going to talk about the Bluetooth support service, and this is quite simply a method of connecting Bluetooth device to your computer. There are headphones and microphones, and also your cellular phone will utilize Bluetooth as well. But I find that it's far more efficient to connect your cell phone through a USB device because it recharges your device, and it also gives you a method for transferring files at the same time. So I've gone ahead and disabled this service. Going on to the branch cache. The branch cache supplies network content from other computers on your local network. So I've gone and disabled this. Going on to CNG key isolation. This is a method of securing your local network. It uses cryptographic operations and encrypts connections and keys associated with the network. So I would highly recommend that you set this service to automatic. Going on down the list of computer browser, this is a method of updating a list of computers and network resources that are on your local network. For example, if you click on the File Explorer here and you click on Network, you'll see a list of computers and printers, scanners, routers, any other device that's connected to your network here. And as you can see here, Network Discovery or SSDP is turned off on my network. So go ahead and disable that one. Going on down the list, Credential Manager. This is a method of providing secure storage for any user information, application information, or other security services on your computer. So this is a very handy service. It is very secure. So go ahead and turn this to automatic. Going down the list a little bit further here, we've got Distributed Link Tracking Clients. This is a method of indexing NTFS files across computers across an entire network. And it really just speeds up file and print sharing across the network by indexing the file information for your computer. So go ahead and disable that. Going on down the list to DNS Client, this is for providing a DNS cache of all your domain name system names. Every time your browser goes out looking for information on the internet, such as a website, it's going to request DNS address, and that address information is going to get stored to this DNS cache, so that computers that are locally on your local network will be able to read that from the DNS cache instead of going to the internet and searching for it first. So that's really all it is. I would just add that by disabling this service, you can help to limit man-in-the-middle attacks, that is, hijacking of DNS information. Encrypting file systems, this is a pretty straightforward service. It provides you with a method of encrypting NTFS system volume information on your local hard drive. And I'm going to be showing you a little bit later how you can use BitLocker to do just that. So go ahead and set that up to automatic. Going down to Extensible Authentication Protocol. Extensible Authentication Protocol, or EAP, works in conjunction with NAP. It provides a layer of security for wired, wireless, and virtual private networking connections on your local network. It will be one of the more secure methods of connecting your devices to your network. So go ahead and set that to automatic. Fax service is very straightforward. It's just a method of utilizing a fax resources for a computer. It provides you with a method of faxing information and receiving faxes. I'm not planning on using any kind of faxes on my computer, so I'm going to disable that as well. The function discovery provider host, this is just a method of network discovery. It utilizes the SSDP to find and publish resources over your local network. So go ahead and disable that. Same with a resource publication, that's just a method of publishing the computer name. Going down to health key and certificate management, this is another security service that Windows 7 has implemented for the network access protection agent, and it just provides a method of certificates for network access protection. Very good way to help secure your network a little bit more. So click that to automatic. Going down to home group listener, this is a method of file and print sharing. It's also a method of remote assistance invitations. And as I don't have any other computers that I'm going to be doing that with, I've gone ahead and disabled that. Go ahead with home group provider and providing network information. It publishes your network information on the local network. So go ahead and disable that one as well. Auth IP, this is a very good method of encrypting your information for internet as well as for local network communication. I'll be showing you how to set up IP security later on, so go ahead and set that up to automatic. Going down to IP helper. IP helper is a method of transitioning or translating IPv6 address information to IPv4 address information so that IPv4 can have multiple connections. As my internet service provider doesn't provide me with IPv6 addresses at this point in time because it hasn't been implemented yet, I've gone ahead and disabled this service. Going on down the list a little bit further to IP security policy agent. Again, this is a method of IP security to verify the origin of where information is coming from and verify computer authentication before allowing information to be connected to or encrypted or decrypted. I'll be showing you how to set that up later on. So go ahead and set that up to automatic. The KTM-RM for Distributed Transaction Coordinator is a method of the kernel transaction manager here. And actually it says right on it that if it is not needed, that the service should remain stopped. So I've gone ahead and I've disabled mine. I actually haven't found a use for the KTM yet. Link layer topology discovery mapper is just a simple way of mapping your network and what PCs are on your network, or what printers are on your network, or what scanners are on your network, and I already showed you that with the File Explorer earlier, so just go ahead and disable that. Going on down the list to iSCSI the initiator to service, this is a method of session management for remote targeted devices on your network, and again I have no devices to target, so I've gone ahead and disabled that. Going on down the list to NetLogon. NetLogon is a method of creating a secure channel between you and your domain controller, but for the vast majority of us who use home networks, we don't have a domain controller. So just go ahead and disable that service, just taking up additional resources. Network Access Protection Agent. This is perhaps the most comprehensive and important service of network access protection through Windows 7 services. So you definitely want to enable this. Set it to automatic. Some of the previous services that we've already looked at require this service. So make sure that this service is starting on startup. Going on down the list a little bit further to offline files. Offline files cache is a method of caching any information. Perhaps you're sharing file information on another computer that you're working on remotely from this computer to that computer. If the computer you're connecting to work on that information goes offline or restarts or disconnects for any reason, the information that you're working on will be saved in a file cache. So if you're working remotely on other people's computers and working on file information on remote computers, this is a very good service to have enabled. But for the vast majority of us, we're using this as a standalone computer. So just go ahead and disable that. Parental controls pretty much speak for themselves. It's just a method of restricting information that you may not want your kids to see or teenagers to see or what have you. For my personal use, I don't require this service, so I've just gone ahead and disabled it. Peer name resolution protocol. This is just another method of remote assistance invitations and file and print sharing. So go ahead and disable these. That goes for the peer network grouping and the peer networking identity manager as well. This is just a method of peer-to-peer grouping, file and print sharing for home group, and remote assistance invitations as well. PNPX IP bus enumerators, the next service we're going to talk about. It's just another method of SSDP discovery for plug-and-play devices such as printers, scanners, and cameras. So go ahead and disable that one as well. PNRP machine name publication service. This is just a method of publishing the machine name of this computer to the local network. Portable device enumerator service. This is a method of publishing mass storage devices for your local network. Say you have a USB external hard drive or a Cat5 networking hard drive that you have installed on your network. This would allow you to share those resources. Print spooler is a method of connecting your printer. And again, if you don't have a printer, you can go ahead and disable the service. Just remember that if you disable the service and you decide to connect a printer later on to a USB port or a network port, you'll have to come back and enable this service. Going on down the list of protected storage. Protected storage is another very useful security service for Windows. It allows you to protect password information, service information, processes, or user information. So I would highly recommend you set that to automatic so it starts on startup with your computer. QWave, or Quality Windows Audio Video Experience, is a method of sharing audio video information with your local network. It provides you a method to stream media. So I would go ahead and disable that service if you're not planning on streaming media. Remote Access Auto Connection Manager. It's a method of publishing your DNS information and your NetBIOS name over your local network or even over a remote network. As I'm not planning on doing that and I'm not planning on setting up virtual private networking connections locally, I would recommend you go ahead and disable that. Remote Access Connection Manager. This manages all dial-up connections and virtual private networking connections. It is possible to set up a virtual private networking by configuring one locally on your computer through Windows. The vast majority of us, though, would download virtual private networking software and connect to a remote server to suit our purposes better. So just go ahead and disable this service. Remote desktop configuration. I'm not planning on connecting to a desktop of another computer remotely, so I've gone ahead and disabled this service. Remote desktop services is commonly referred to as terminal services, and it's just a method of taking over somebody else's mouse and keyboard in their desktop and configuring it or changing it. So I've gone ahead and disabled that as well. The user mode port redirector is primarily for printers and scanners and cameras and that sort of thing, and hard drives that you might be sharing. And so if you're not sharing any of those things, you can go ahead and disable this service. The remote registry is pretty straightforward. It is exactly what it says it is. It allows you to remotely connect to somebody else's Windows registry and modify the settings. The next one I want to talk about is Secure Socket Tunneling Protocol. And the SSTP here is a method of using virtual private network to remotely connect computers. And I have no use for Secure Socket Tunneling Protocol because I'm not going to be hosting a VPN or using a VPN to connect to other computers on my network or even other remote computers. Server is the next one I want to talk about. This is probably the most important service for file and print sharing over your local network. If you don't have any files or printers to share, this should almost certainly be disabled as it is a big security risk. Going on down the list of smart card. Smart card service, this is another method of securing the local computer. You'll notice here in removal policies, has a lot to do with locking the user desktop. And basically what it does is it installs certificate information to SD cards or USB flash devices that when removed from the computer, lock the computer until the device is plugged back in. Which is primarily, I believe, more for domain environments for organizations for security purposes. But go ahead and disable both of those. SNMP trap messages, simple network management protocol. Basically, it's just a method of forwarding information. And I don't really have a use for SNMP protocol, as I don't particularly use trap messages for any reason. Going on, SSDP discovery. SSDP discovery protocol, this is primarily for discovering any device that's on your local network. If you have a computer or a camera or a scanner, again, this will be the service that goes out there and discovers it for you and brings you back that information. So you can go ahead and disable that. I'm going to click that off. Alright, and down the list a little bit further to tablet and PC input services. If you have a tablet that you want to connect to your computer, it's best that you leave the service on. Otherwise, you can go ahead and disable the service. It just saves you a little bit more in the way of resources. TCP/IP NetBIOS Helper. This publishes your NetBIOS name over TCP/IP communication, and it's primarily for file and print sharing. Again, I don't have any use for NetBIOS, so I've disabled it. Telephony is just an API that helps control information for network devices on the local computer over your local area network. So I've gone ahead and disabled that as well. TPM based services. Now, this is a module TPM that gets installed onto your motherboard, and it provides you with a method of security boot on your computer. It protects your boot sector and securely boots your computer without it being any information being changed. But you have to have a TPM module installed by your motherboard manufacturer. If you don't have a TPM, you might as well go ahead and disable this service. And this quite closely ties into BitLocker information services, encryption services. So I'll be hosting a video about BitLocker and how to do that a little bit later on. But for the time being, go ahead and disable that service. Going on to UPnP device hosting, this service is primarily, again, for hosting cameras, scanners, or any other device that you want to connect. So I've gone and disabled that. Going down to web client, this service provides you with a method of connecting to online servers for the purpose of a web hosting and changing web hosting files. And the vast majority of home users aren't going to be using a web client service to connect to servers. We almost always certainly use our browser or third-party software to connect remotely and update our web service information or web hosting information. So go ahead and disable that. Going on down the list of Windows Biometrics services, some of you might be familiar with Biometrics. There are cell phones on the market right now that use facial recognition software to unlock, and Biometrics is a big part of that. And again, this is just used for another method of securing your computer locally. Although I think a password is more than sufficient. Windows Card Space, this is a service that manages secure digital identities, meaning that if you wanted to, you could go to the control panel and create a digital identity that would store your credit card information, phone number information, or home address information, or box number, or so on, securely, and prevent people from accessing that information. As I don't put that kind of information on my computer ever, I've disabled this service. Going down to the Windows Connect Now Config Registrar, this is a method of turning your Wi-Fi into an access point using the WPS protocol. And again, you would have to have a Wi-Fi enabled network card or perhaps a laptop in order to utilize this function. And this ties in closely with ALG, the very first service we were talking about. So for my purposes, I've disabled this. Going on down the list to image acquisition, this is a service that provides you with the ability to install scanners and cameras. And again, if I choose to come back and install a scanner or camera, I'll have to come back and enable the service. But for the vast majority of us who don't have scanners or cameras, we can just disable this service. Going down a little bit further to Windows Media Receiver Service, this is just a method of watching TV and FM broadcasting on your computer. And it was an idea through Windows Media Center to watch television. And so you can just shut that off, that and the scheduler service. The Windows Media Player Networking Sharing Service, it gives you the ability to share media devices remotely on your local network, so that other computers or other people on your local network can find your media devices and connect to them. And I've gone ahead and disabled this service as well. Going down to wired autoconfig here, this service is a good security service for anybody that's using a Cat5 network cable to plug their computer into a router. And this is an excellent security service, this 802.1. It performs a lot of authentication for Ethernet adapters like your network card. So I would highly recommend you switch this to automatic. Going on to WLAN Autoconfig, this is the exact same service, but for wireless devices. Now, as this is a desktop computer, I don't have any Wi-Fi connected devices, so I've gone and disabled this. If you're using a Wi-Fi device, it's a very handy security service. Workstation, this ties in very closely with the server service that we examined just a little while ago. It has to do with the SMB protocol, and it's a method of connecting to remote servers using encryption. And a little bit later on, I'll be hosting a video about primary domain controllers, and I can show you how to connect and configure this. But for the vast majority of home users, you won't be connecting to a domain controller, so just go ahead and disable this. Going down to WLAN Autoconfig, the very last service that we're going to be talking about. This is a method of internet connection through GSM and CDMA, which is cellular services. And the vast majority of us won't be connecting to our internet through a cellular device, especially not a desktop computer. The vast majority of laptops these days use Wi-Fi, so even Wi-Fi for laptops is better than cellular service. So just go ahead and disable that. So that completes the vast majority of our Windows 7 services that I'll be talking about. A lot of the other additional services that I haven't talked about yet are core components of the Windows operating system, and probably should not be changed unless you have some understanding of what they do. The very last thing you want to do is disable a service that you're going to require. You can always come back and enable them later on, but a method for doing that, for example, actually I'll quickly show you here, is there's this dependencies tab here, and this dependencies tab is going to list all the other services that it depends on. Right, so if any of these services are not functioning because we've disabled them or stopped them in some method, you can always come back and click on that service and enable it to get the service to turn back on. Okay, so that's just a quick rundown on the Windows 7 services, and I'm just going to quickly mention here that a lot of the services that I've focused on here are constantly listening on your local network. And they provide backdoor access to your computer from your local network. So if a hacker manages to penetrate the local security on your router and get onto your, spoof their way onto your local network, these services could all be misused to allow an attacker access. And by disabling them, what we've managed to do is reduce the attack surface so that your computer is not broadcasting information for connection on your local network. And that will help reduce how many times an attacker can penetrate your computer. These are all very good services to enable and disable on your computer if you're not using them. So just restart your computer, and that'll finish restarting all the proper services that we just finished configuring. If you like these videos, please feel free to comment below or visit our website. I believe the link will be provided down there on the bottom for you. Thanks for watching.